What's up, everybody? Tony Gracia here with Ian, and we are going to go over one of the ways to escape the mounted position. We actually just taught this last night in class, and I'm going to start by going over some of the basics of the escape itself. These are probably pretty familiar to most people. I think the big takeaways we went over last night were some of the steps to get there to help the reversal be successful to begin with. But let's just go with the reversal in and of itself right now. Okay, so I'm on the bottom, Ian's in the mounted position. Okay, and we're going to do just our basic bridge and roll escape. Okay, so if I'm going to roll Ian towards the camera, I need to trap his leg and his arm on the side I'm going to roll him to so that he can't post out. If I neglect to trap his arm or his leg or both, then what will happen is I'm going to go from bad to worse. I would try to roll and I would just end up belly down in a pretty nasty spot. Ian has a good opportunity to get the choke. If it's a situation where punches are a possibility, then he could obviously punch me or elbow me or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to need to first make sure that his hands are down on a mat, or at least the hand I want to trap. I'm going to trap it, pull it in as tight to his elbow as I can, and do my best to block his foot as best as I possibly can. I use both my feet to bridge as high to the sky as possible and up and over. Okay? A couple of key details on this before we go into the setup part. Try to keep your hands clasped around your partner's arm. By me keeping my hands clasped together the whole time, it's gonna make sure that I don't accidentally try to like drive him over with my arm, which would extend it and let him maybe armbar me. So I really want to keep my hands squeezed together pretty tightly. Now, let's look at this one more time, how I wrap his arm up. There's sort of two ways. I get his hand on the mat. The way I like is like this, and I put my palms together and I pull in really tight. That's my personal preference, okay? You will see some people, you'll even see some very good black belts that like to wrap it over like this and tuck it in this way. They can maybe lock their hands if they so choose like that. Now this is a strong wrap. I got to use stronger muscle groups in order to do it. His arm is trapped really tight, but the problem is that I do need to extend my arm, which is temporarily vulnerable, and if he's good at like head and arm chokes or Americanas or things like that, he does have a window that he can do that, versus if I stay in really tight and I just quickly grab, the window for him to do anything on me is very small, and it's much less likely that anything will go wrong. So again, I'm going to put my foot right by his foot, I lift up, and we go over right there. Okay? So the actual bridging and rolling is usually pretty straightforward. You can teach somebody to do that pretty successfully in their very first class. What we're going to talk about next is a really important distinction that I don't see taught a whole lot, and this is really going to make or break your mount escapes. And that's understanding which sub-position of mount we're in. And without even going to ones where we angle off, like a S-mount or a triple thread or things like that, there's at least 4 different sub-positions within mount, just a square symmetrical mount. And you need to know which one we're in, and we need to know which one that you want to be in. Because there's one of these 4 that is definitely the easiest to do our escapes from. And if we're not in that one, we need to realize that, and we need to try to make some progress to try to get there before we try to do our escapes. So now I'll take the top position. I'm going to have Ian at the bottom. We're going to go about a 45-degree angle right here. Right about there. Okay? Okay, so first off, we're going to look at my hips compared to Ian's hips. In this example, I'm in what we would probably call a low mount. I feel Ian's thigh muscles on my butt, okay? So basically I'm sitting right above his belt. This is one position my hips could be in. Another one is if I have enough space, I can go up much higher to his chest, trying to get closer to his collarbones into a high mount, okay? So we have low and high. And then from each of these, we have either my hands on the mat or my hands not on the mat. They can either be in the air or trying to make grips on his collar, on his arms, whatever. Okay? So obviously we have all 4 possibilities. High mount, hands up. High mount, hands down. Low mount, hands up, and then low mount, hands down. This is the one that's going to be the easiest for Ian to escape, is when my hips are over his hips and my hands are on the mat. So what we spend a lot of time in our class is working on getting to there if we don't already start there. So let's trade roles and take a look here. So now Ian is going to go into what is probably the hardest position for me to escape, which is high mount and his hands are not on the mat. This is very hard for me to escape. I can bridge my hips as hard as I want and it'll barely move him because he's not above my hips. I bridge and I can barely move him. So you can see I could potentially just exhaust myself and I could use all of my energy and it's not going to work very well. So I need to get him over my hips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put both my hands on one of his hip bones. Okay, make sure you're on the same side. Don't go one on each. Go both on the same side. Then I'm going to lift my hips up just a little bit and I'm going to squirm like this and shoulder walk until I feel his butt and my thigh muscles touching. Okay? Now I'm in a good position where I'm going to keep pressure on his hip, pushing pretty strong, and I'm going to use one of my knees and I'm going to whack him in the butt. Okay? And that should make his hands go to the mat. I have to be ready for it so I can quickly get his arm and then do the roll. Okay? We'll show one final time and then we'll sign off for the day. Okay. So he's in the high mount. Okay? Both of my hands to his same hip bone. I pull in my toes as close as possible, lift my hips slightly, shoulder walk like this. Keep pushing on his hip while you bump him in the butt. This is going to make sure that the bump is effective and he doesn't just slide back to where he used to be. So bump him in the butt, grab his arm, trap his leg, bridge, and roll. All right, so that's what we've got for you for today. Again, I think the bridge and roll escape is something that most people get exposure to pretty early on in their jiu-jitsu, and they should. It's an important escape to know. And I think a lot of people struggle with it because they're trying it from a sub position of mount that is very difficult to do it from. So hopefully this gives you some tools to improve which mounted like sub position you're in and make that bridge and roll escape a little bit more effective.